In other words, if you're the black sheep and you've agreed to basically play out all the pain and hostility of your whole system so that everyone can tut-tut and pretend it's not them, you can't fight. Oh, you can drink yourself to death, you can commit suicide, you can be a lecher, you can steal money. You got all kinds of options. You just can't confront your family system and say, get this shit off me. You know damn well that the only reason I'm doing this is to make you feel better. And you know damn well that the reason I look so bad over here is I refuse to tell the secret of this person over here. You know damn well you're both cowards, and I just didn't have the heart to tell you when you're so terrified of your own cowardice, so I played along. I'm your scapegoat, the one you need more than anyone in this culture. I gave you what you wanted, which means you got to look at why you wanted it. Well, give back the forbidden part of that triangle. The sixth metric is your social, financial, physical survival in jeopardy? Or do you experience it in jeopardy? So it's meaning you can look at your reality and say it is in jeopardy, and that's fine. That's one way of accessing it. Or you can look at it and say that it isn't in jeopardy, but you feel that it is. Either one counts. So map out where that is and what you're doing to survive. Be honest about it. Are you lying? Are you stealing? Are you pretending to be someone you're not? The more you have to pretend, basically, the more you have to lie or be invisible, the more unhealthy the culture you are in. Because a healthy culture prepares a place for the full healthy probability of every one of its people and nurtures that into its rightful role. An unhealthy culture, creates all kinds of people, but then attacks half of them. It's always the minorities that get scapegoated and attacks them. Can be blacks, can be women, can be people who aren't educated, whatever they are. Let's attack them. Muslims. Doesn't matter. An unhealthy culture produces a diversity of people and then decides on a minority to scapegoat, and then everyone takes all their fear and aggression and attacks that minority. A healthy culture will learn from its scapegoats. We'll say, look, we dumped all our shit on you. What can you teach us about us? Tell us who we don't know that we are. Show us where we are psychopathic. Teach us where we are emotionally illiterate, because you've felt the stupidity of our ignorance. Tell us. We want to learn. That's a growing culture. Blame us and shame us and marginalize us, that's a degenerating culture. That's a traumatized culture. That is a culture that is at risk of not surviving. Do you have access to your full range of emotions? Go through the wheel, we talked a little bit about that earlier, and see if there's any emotion on the wheel that is not okay. We don't do anger here. We don't do intense emotions. You should be able, like a color wheel. Photoshop is a great software because you've got access to 256 million colors, every texture, and you get a sense of just how much fluidity there is. Now, a talented graphic artist has mastery about when and why to use each of these colors to create an impact that is the intention of the artist. An emotionally illiterate, trauma-based, shame-based human being does not have access to their full palette of emotions. Anger can be, it's peeving me a little bit. I'm peeved. A little bit longer. I'm feeling more peeved. And then it shuts down. I'm not being here in this situation. This is not, and you dissociate from your own emotion rather than go into the emotional state that the environment elicits. Think of the heart as a thermostat. If it's 58 degrees outside, the thermostat is going to read 58 degrees. If it's 40 below zero, it's going to read 40 below zero. Now, if for some strange reason you're in a family where 60 degrees is off limit, who knows? The thermostat is still going to read 60 degrees, but you can't talk about it. And then you can't talk about not being able to talk about it. So you go a bit crazy. So what is okay? Okay. So every time it's 60 degrees, I have to say it's 80 degrees. It's 80 degrees out right now. Well, you find these taboo block points by going through all your emotions. If you can't understand when you watch a movie, here's another good thing. If you can't understand when you watch a movie why every single person in a well-written drama is doing what they're doing, you don't have access to the full range of your own colors. If you can't imagine ever committing a murder, ever wanting to obliterate a people, it just means you won't look at part of your own probability field. If you think you are somehow magically better or worse than Hitler, or Stalin, or Bush, or Trump, or anyone else you care to name, or Gandhi, or Christ, if you think you're magically better or worse, that you could never do that, it just means you don't know yourself. You don't understand how that mechanism would be accessible within your psyche. Because those people are dealing with essentially the same ingredients in their kitchen as you're dealing with in yours. And if you can't imagine how you could possibly make a pancake with the flour and eggs and milk in your kitchen, it just means you're not willing to look at reality in certain areas. Why? Why? Who are you protecting by those lies? Mom could never make a pancake, so you could never make a pancake? Or Mom made pancakes and called them omelets? Or she made pancakes and called them truffle soufflés? This is the great, game you can play with language. If you decide that a given word is bad, and it normally correlates with a bad thing, strangling your baby is bad, no. I performed an act of euthanasia. Okay, well, is that good? It is in my world, so no strangling kids. Euthanasia for the liberation of the soul. Suddenly doesn't look so bad, does it? I've loved you unconditionally. It's great, isn't it? I thought that was rape. No, it was unconditional love. If you loved me unconditionally, you wouldn't have called it rape. You'd have had sex with me willingly. So you didn't. You didn't know how to love me unconditionally, but I knew how to love you unconditionally. And so there you go. Language is one of the easiest things to corrupt. It can be a completely meaningless currency that is confusing and leads to insanity if you pay attention to the words rather than the behavior and their impact. Or it can be a tool of liberation. You decide. Is there any area where you feel trapped, suspended, and helpless, inside or outside? Just as importantly, is there a region in your psyche where you will do anything to avoid dropping into that? I don't see scary movies because it could make me feel helpless and scary in this. I don't go over to that part of the neighborhood because the way it makes me feel is so small. I don't want to get anywhere near that part in me, so I can't go anywhere near that neighborhood. I don't go down there. Well, we create ghettos left and right in our civilized cultures by the same approach. If everyone who's doing anything painful or unpleasant would just agree to go over to this area and we won't look, and we just go over there, and nothing to do with us. We are civilized people who can't be bothered to go over to the wrong side of town and figure out what these people are having to deal with and why the culture is producing this crop of people within our probability field, and how we're a part of it with our enabling and denial cycle. So, could be something to take some responsibility, the ability to respond. We could respond, but we're not going to. Is there an area? Because that's always the area. There's nothing more helpless and devastating than this sense of flooded overwhelm, with no time. It just consumes you. So, more mapping in this terrain, more understanding. A key other metric to look at around this, because it's an overlap. These are just different points for finding and developing a traumatic map. Will you fight for your right to live with dignity? If someone takes dignity from you, crosses various boundaries, will you fight for your right to live with dignity? Because that's a good fight. Every 2-year-old will fight for their dignity until they're smothered, beaten, and hated into a point where it's like, okay, I didn't understand. My job is to enable the abuse, and you'll let me live. Okay, I won't fight anymore. That breaks the spirit. You split the spirit in half, and now half of the self enables the abuse on condition that the self isn't obliterated through the body entirely. Do you believe you are a bad person and everyone around you is good? We're dealing with scapegoating dynamics, which is always a response to trauma. No one agrees to be a scapegoat just for fun. Gee, let's see. How would I enjoy being absolutely miserable so that everyone else can deny their shadow? Well, that sounds like fun. No. The scapegoat is usually the sensitive, because in a high stimulating culture that shames the feminine and shames sensitivity, the sensitive gets bullied into the least ranking role. It's like a play. Okay, we're going to do King Lear. Who wants to be King Lear? Well, the alpha gets to play King Lear, because when the sensitive says, well, shut up, there's physical dominance. There's emotional dominance. The sensitive, reels from those batterings. So in the pecking order of a dominance hierarchy, the sensitive will play the last role available. Who wants to be the one that gets skewered by the sword in that point of the drama? Not me. Well, you're going to play it. You're the only one left. We need someone to be skewered by a sword. Couldn't you get someone else? No, we don't want to be skewered by a sword. Lay down there. We're skewering you with a sword. So the sensitive, the innocent, the fool, the youngest, the smallest, the most feminine, ends up with a shitty role in a dominance hierarchy, particularly a patriarchal, chauvinistic dominance hierarchy. They'll end up with a shitty job. Well, in this family system, the scapegoat is the shittiest job around. So it's usually the sensitive who figures out all the horror in every other person's psyche and then embodies it to distract attention outside of the self for all of the people in the family system. And they feel so much better with the scapegoat around, as long as the scapegoat is owning it. Oh, I'm so useless. See, then everyone, oh, well, let's help the useless one, and now we get to be the teacher. Oh, I'm broke, I have no money. Well, I'm the generous one. I'll give you a few bucks, but get out of here and, sort your life out. Aren't I powerful? Well, you're only powerful because they agreed to be helpless. They agreed to pretend that you were needed for their thing because you that's what makes you feel good. They've done studies. If you want to become bonded emotionally to people, one thing you can do is you can offend them in ways that seem accidental, and you can apologize. And then you make them look bitter, or you, even better, be almost dead, like on the side of the road, wait till some person's coming along, stab a dagger in you, and, oh, I've been mobbed, I've been robbed. And they'll stop and they'll rush you to the hospital. And these people will be interested in you for life. Oh, you're the one I saved 10 years ago? What's going on in your life? You still remember the time when I saved you? Oh, it's wonderful. So so one of the scams out there is let someone save your life and then ask them for money. You are about 20 times more likely to, you want 10 grand for something or other? Let someone save your life, let them be the hero, and then ask them for 10 grand. You go up to them with a perfectly good proposal. You ask them for 10 grand for charity. Not a chance. Help these children over here? Fuck you. You had to go to the hospital to save my life? Here's 10 grand. It should give you an idea of how valuable the scapegoating role is, and how valuable it is that the scapegoat doesn't reveal what a service they're providing by letting everyone else look grandiose. So this is, if you believe, that's part of the ideal scapegoat actually believes it. They've grown up being scapegoated, and so they truly believe the role. They're in it. If you believe that you're the bad one and everyone else is good, you are so deep in a traumatic system, it's not even safe for you to see the truth. It's never true, by the way. Healthy systems don't raise scapegoats. So the badder you are, the more shitty the environment that raised you were. Now, this can be flipped manipulatively and into the other thing, where you really want to punish your parents, just, be an absolute shit and ruin your life and da-da-da-da-da. And everyone will say, gosh, what terrible parents they had, So that's the other side. Some people will, that's kind of, you made me play the scapegoat, I'm going to play it to the hilt, and, you're going to feel rotten, So there can be that leverage, and, just don't come around here. We'll give you money and all that. And so there's this, but it's a shitty role. And if you're in that role, it's because you didn't have another role that you know how to play, because it's not fun. I mean, it may be funner to manipulate and punish your parents than to lay there feeling miserable and invisible. But it's not as fun to punish your parents as it is to develop your gifts, feel confident in your beauty, be a magnificent human being. If you're not doing that, it's because you don't know how. You don't have certainty or confidence around it in some way. Now, the same is true if you're stuck in the other position. What we're looking for is an asymmetry of ownership. So if you're stuck in the other position and you believe that you're good and everyone else is bad, you will not own that you are part of the probability field in which you exist by either causing something or tolerating it. Tolerating or allowing is what enables abuse. If you tolerate and allow yourself to be hit, you will be hit if you are with a violent partner. If you don't want to play your role in the cycle of violence, you must not tolerate, which means you need to have other options and resources to either hold the boundary or extricate yourself from the situation. So that's the other side. The righteous parent who doesn't make any mistakes. The righteous preacher who's better than everyone else. The Republican who knows all problems are caused by Democrats. The Democrat that knows all the problems are caused by the Republicans. You want to be aware that in the scientific equation of reality creation, everyone is a part of causing and or allowing every part of the system that is expressing itself in and around us. You said, no, I don't have any power. Okay, so that's how you're enabling the system. You're telling a lie that you don't have any power, and then you're spending your energy reinforcing that lie and trying to prove that power. See, I couldn't have done anything here. I couldn't have done anything here. And doing everything possible to avoid the power that you might easily step into. If owning your power didn't nearly get you killed as a 2-year-old when you went against the abuse system and you were totally out of scale. So it all comes back to this, asymmetries of this nature come back to these underlying traumatic coping mechanisms. Because truly, if you could be valued and honored in your power, why would you give it up? Doesn't make any sense. Who wants to be incompetent and pathetic? Anyone? Well, if the choice is being raged at and being competent and owning your power, or being pathetic and pretending you can't do anything and letting the abuser dominate everything, well, then there's a reasonable hypothesis around which to be powerless. But it takes a traumatic probability for someone to be willing to give up something as innate as their own agency. So if you're in either of those polarities, it is symptomatic of an underlying environment that demanded that level of rigidity. The person who can't make mistakes is often in the perfectionistic side that we saw earlier. The parent who, as a child, was terrified they would never be loved if they weren't perfect, is still projecting the parent on the neighbors, on the government, on the social hierarchy around them. And so they've got to drill it into the child that they're perfect, which means the child has to hold all the flaws of the parent because the parent is still a terrified infant, projecting parent on everyone else. And that's why the child needs to be the scapegoat. So if you're in either of those roles, the scapegoat or the perfect one, you're stuck in a coping mechanism that only makes sense when you're in traumatic terrain, because it's not fun. When trauma, i.e. the threat of death, mentally, emotionally, financially, socially, and physically, when those threats of death are removed, you do what's fun. When they're there, you do what you need to do to survive. So another metric to examine, and another aspect of the map, is your level of integration. And so the areas that you can integrate, you've got energy, you've got feelings, you've got actions, you've got words, and you've got time. So a completely disintegrated person is otherwise known as a schizophrenic, where they say this they mean something else. What they say now doesn't relate to what they say in an hour. What they say in an hour doesn't relate to what they said a day ago or next week. So you've got the disintegration of words. This doesn't match this. Then you've got the disintegration of words and actions. I'm going to do this, but then I do this instead. The disintegration of actions. I did this, but I didn't actually do that. You have the disintegration of feelings. I feel angry, but I get small. I feel grief, but I put on a smile. So what disintegration points to is coping strategies. And coping strategies meaning it's very painful to split the self. And every split between this past hour and the future hour, when you dissociate, the split of dissociation so that you're no longer present in your body. Every split within the self is painful. That's what pain is, the separation from the whole. You take a hand, you cut a finger off, you've now split a finger, you've disintegrated a finger from the rest of the hand, pain erupts as a symptom to tell you you're going in the wrong direction. Now, every single time we split words, thoughts, feelings, time, words and actions, words and thoughts, energy and words, that before it precipitates into a feeling or a thought, every time you split one of those, it creates pain. And so there's only one thing that's strong enough to create that amount of split. And it's trauma. The message that if you don't split, you could die. That's a powerful enough motivation to disintegrate the self. So you have the hierarchy of human needs: survival, security of survival, love and belonging. When you do something that is part of the cultural split, because the split doesn't originate in the self, the split originates in the cult. The cult raises a culture of people who are very materialistic, very self-absorbed, and very emotionally illiterate. Well, when you create people that are not emotionally and relationally literate, you make it harder for people to have relationships. So let's say prostitution emerges as a response to the fact that people can't connect in a healthier way. Because truly, if you could create the emotional, physical, sexual, mental connection that you wanted with another human being, who on earth would prefer to have a more mediocre relationship with a stranger who doesn't want to be there? No, it's you cause fracturing within the population. Prostitution arises as an enterprise. I will pretend to love you. I will pretend to enjoy fucking you or whatever for money. I don't want to be there for you. I want to be there for a symbol of value. I value bits of paper more than you. Now, this is the hypocrisy of the cult. Because it says, we don't want to have, sex trafficking, prostitution. No, we don't want that. So, okay, so you don't want that, right? So you're going to invest in healthy relationships. You're going to teach communication skills at school. You're going to go over the best win-win protocols at school. You're going to tell children how to raise a hand and get support when they're being sexually abused. What exactly are you going to do to invest in these great relationships you say you want? Well, we're going to do absolutely nothing. In fact, relationships is the one subject we are going to blatantly ignore in school. I see, so you don't want good relationships. You want people who know algebra and who don't know how to have conversations together. Well, no, we want people to have good conversations and have a well-rounded education. Oh, I see, a well-rounded education that includes the most important skill in a culture. No, a well-rounded school that passionately avoids any useful topic for daily life. Now, are you talking with a sociopath here? Are you talking with a schizophrenic? Yes, you're talking to your culture. The split begins in the culture. And, having necessitated, for example, prostitution, it then turns around and makes it illegal. You may have survival needs, which include procreation. But hey, we're not going to teach you how to relate. We're going to give you terrible role models. And then if you find a workaround, someone who will relate to you for money, we'll make that illegal. Okay, good for you. Sociopathic, schizophrenic culture. So now you go to a prostitute, but now you can't tell anyone because then you've broken the law for finding your best workaround to meet a human need. Well, see, the schizophrenic, sociopathic, hypocritical rifts between a culture, between what a culture says it wants and what it actually wants, what it says it's going to do and what it actually does. These rifts migrate down to the individual level. And now, when someone says, what did you do this afternoon? You don't say, well, in a culture as fucked up as ours, I wanted to have a conversation with so-and-so, but they blew me off. This other person lies and says, they're busy. This person doesn't want to talk to me. This person is angry and nervous if I talk about things that are truthful. So, in desperation, I thought, rather than just feel futile, I'll go see a prostitute. So that's what I spent the afternoon doing. What? What? You told the truth about what's fucked up in our culture? We can't have them over, again. And so the split and the hypocrisy within the culture then migrates down to the individual level. And the way that you can tell that a culture is traumatized is by the degree that it is split. Your friendly government is absolutely committed for your health. Okay, so far so good. Your friendly government is going to ban marijuana. Why? Because it kills 100 times less people than alcohol. That's why. As a Schedule I drug. Why? Because we want to arrest black people. Why? Well, we're not going to tell you, And so so your friendly government doesn't want you using this Schedule I drug that has no medicinal value. So what? It's going to put you up in a hotel so that you don't harm yourself with this terrible substance because they're trying to look out for you? No. We're worried about your health. So we're going to lock you up in prison. But wait a minute. Hello. I'm not sure you realize this, Mr. Culture, but more people get raped, get PTSD, feel miserable, and make less money in prison than they do smoking marijuana, which you're so worried about. So, wouldn't it make more sense, given your concern for my health, if you sent a box of organic food to my house in a community co-op every week so that I would be more healthy at an expense to the taxpayer of $25 a week, rather than put me in a concrete box where I am statistically likely to become more criminal and almost certainly likely to become less healthy, at $80,000 a year of taxpayer money. Wouldn't that make sense? Well, we can't talk about that. The patheticness. You watch these directors on C-SPAN or whatever. These idiots running these departments. They can't answer these basic questions. What is exactly the risk of marijuana use? And you realize that the shit starts at the top and works its way down. And of course, having worked its way down, the shit works its way back up to the top. Every one of our top leaders in government in any position of power was born in the same culture as everyone else and just got elected or appointed. The issue is the cult within culture. And once it's at the top, it works its way down. So to the degree that you see splits within a family, look to the outer environment and at the pressures within the cult to split that family. Take incestuous abuse. Little Jenny, fucked by her father, tells her mother, who tells her never to talk about it. That's the most unhealthy thing the mother could possibly do. It will likely cause more harm than the actual abuse. So why is the mother abusing her daughter? Because the mother knows that she's in an abusive cult and that Jenny will suffer as a result of being born in this abusive cult that not only raises fathers that fuck their daughters, but that raises bullies and emotionally and relationally and traumatically illiterate children who will tease and humiliate and isolate Jenny, as well as the family, and that no good thing will come of it. The sickness within the cult is then replicated within the mother, who protects the sickness in the father at the expense of a 6-year-old girl. Is that intelligent? Of course not. But the abuse is symmetrical. It's a fractal pattern. It works its way up from the individual all the way to the top of the power structure and back down again. The degree of disintegration is a representation of a fear of survival, socially, financially, physically, mentally, and emotionally. It's hard enough for a 6-year-old girl to have that amount of unregulated energy, that amount of betrayal and confusion coming at her from the template of her provider and protector. It's a whole nother magnitude to watch an entire community collude to see that Jenny and the family pay the full price for the culture's stupidity in not raising parents capable of protecting their children. Oh yes, parenting was one of the classes we left out of education as well, along with anything useful. Algebra, go to town. Parenting, fuck that. Emotional literacy, fuck that. The stuff you need every day to survive, get the fuck out. That's how much we're committed to children and family in this cult. And we're committed to lying about it with the righteous stupidity with which we defend this joke called education. We've got to have our education. We've got to have an education. Why? You don't learn anything useful. Rote memory, copying out-of-date teachers to learn skills you don't need? They'd be better off with Google and their tablets. Social skills, the art of lying and bullying to get through high school? It's a joke. We've got a lot of disintegration that is learned to survive a disintegrated cult. But it's important to know how and why that happened for you, to map it out. What's your social persona and what's your personal persona? What do you say to your best friend and what do you say to a stranger? What do you say to a hot guy you want to fuck? And what do you say to your husband? The gap between all of these positions is the gap of disintegration. That gap produces pain, and it takes energy to maintain all of these different postures and personas. That energy and that pain is only rational when the pain of integration in a disintegrated and dishonest cult, due to the punishment of trauma directed at those who tell the truth and bring their feelings along with their thoughts and actions to the surface of their body, so that you actually feel just how painful it is to live in a cult that puts money before people, that puts dogma before people, that puts any number of sick and dysfunctional lies before the most vulnerable and innocent people of our cult. Right on the heels of that, another question is, do you feel safe to tell the truth? Do you feel safe to tell the whole truth in the environment that you're in? Now, safety, of course, has different levels, because we need love and belonging as part of the triad of security, survival, love, and belonging. They're all integrated. If you don't survive, you can't be secure in that survival, and you can't love and belong. If you're not secure in your survival, you can't focus on love and belonging, and your anxiety will ultimately kill you by taking years off your life. If you don't have love and belonging, you don't have the goodwill and support of the people around you necessary to create survival and to create the security of that survival. And so when you tell a truth about what you think, about what you see, about what you experienced, and about what you feel about what you see, what you think, and what you experienced. The question is, in your environment, will you be more welcome after you finish speaking that truth? Number one. Will you be safer? Which in this country means, in part, will you make more money? If you talk about a rape or a terror or a stalker or your own sexual obsession, like, hey guys, I'm sexually obsessed. I get into a dark place, and for about 3 days, I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't feel I'm really safe in that situation for everyone else. And I'd like help from everyone in this building where I live to support me. And here's what I'd like. When I start to go into the rabbit hole, I'd like to be able to call 1 of 10 people and talk to them. It'll break the cycle. How about that? Can I have a list of volunteers? Will you support me to make me safer for you? Or, on the flip side, I feel anxious and paranoid about different people, and I'm sorry that I project sexual predation onto anyone who's interested in me. I flirt with them first, and then I project sexual predation, and then I punish anyone who responds. I'm sorry. I don't know quite why I'm doing that. I obviously does something, but I'd like some help in the building for talking about that. Do you get welcomed? Do you get seen? Do you get understood? Do you get support? Does your income go up? Or do you get shamed, avoided, and become the scapegoat for the community that's too dumb to realize that it is a party in that pattern? By participating in a culture of silence, masks, lies, where the politically correct thing is to do anything but tell the truth. Well, just look around you. America is not a very safe place to speak your truth in a full and transparent way, from the vantage point of security, survival, love, and belonging. It's safer, frankly, to be misogynistic, even if you're not. To be, there's all kinds of things that are not very healthy, that it's safer to be than honest. And this is the culture that grows dishonest and unhealthy people. The culture must be tackled in small units of a building, of a floor of a building, of a workplace, of a family, which means consciously taking responsibility for our ability to respond to dysfunctional patterns in the culture and do something about them. Another part of this map is who will abandon, betray, lie, or treat you with contempt if you speak your truth. Who are the specific people? Is there anyone who will support you in your circle if you speak your full truth? Anyone who will leave you feeling honored because you spoke your full truth? Anyone at all? Who are they? Under what conditions? And who won't? Who are they? In what condition? Are you stuck with them? This is the grief of being stuck in a situation that guarantees failure. A really big thing to look at if you're tired, if you're suicidal, if you're depressed, if you're in pain, and if you're anxious, is whose secret are you carrying? So the first thing is the entire cultural secret. We're in the greatest country in the world. We're highly advanced. The first world, not the third world, we're the first world. Well, you do the math. Okay, well, first world, 1 in 3 domestic relationships contain domestic violence, 102 metric tons of garbage per person, 25% chance of getting cancer, 70% probability you feel lonely on a regular basis, 1 in 7 Americans are addicted, no paid maternity leave, emotionally illiterate, trauma illiterate, high probability of divorce, suicide the second leading cause of death in children. Wow, some great country, isn't it? Don't be negative. Protect the abuse cycle. Don't be negative. Now, go ahead and abuse children. You can, rape this girl, do this, fine. As long as but don't talk about it. That's negative. The symbol of all this pain, words, is negative. But the actual pain, go right ahead. Just make sure you're wearing a nice smile, priest, when you walk out from molesting those boys. Don't let it come into public. Well, when the Vatican has to devote an entire microorganizer, a microorganization to move pedophiles from one parish to the other as soon as they get caught, so that the priests can keep abusing people, and everyone who talks negatively about the Catholic Church is demonized for being unholy and critical and not looking on the bright side. Well, you just see how everything good about being positive and looking on the bright side gets co-opted to protect the abusive power structure. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful if every time we committed a crime and anyone tried to talk about it, we told them not to be negative and to look on the bright side, because we didn't rape that person's daughter. So look on the bright side. What, we just raped one girl once. We didn't rape you. Look on the bright side. You see, so you have this constant push. Don't look at what's causing all the pain and dysfunction. Don't show up to the party until you're willing to smile. You owe it to everyone else to lie. And we'll all go home and feel miserable later, but, who can put on the best show? So we're carrying the culture secret, which is many of us feel like shit a lot of the time and don't want to feel like shit and don't know what to do about it, because if you say, hey, I feel like shit, I'm not quite sure what to do, because no, I don't want to take medication to trick my body into thinking that things are great when they're full of shit, and I don't want to pretend that lies are true, so I don't want to feel great about these lies. I'd like to actually examine the facts, etc. Then we look at whose secret we're carrying. I've carried my mother's secret her whole life because she's so terrified of dealing with the reality of her childhood. She's so terrified of being in her body that I take pity on her. I participate in the burial of my own experience out of pity for a mother whose only request is that I don't tell her the truth and therefore do not exist. If you want to hurt yourself, there's a very high probability that there's something you need to say and need to be seen around, that you are very clear from accurate feedback that the people who need to hear it and see you do not want to see and hear. And so you've come up with the bright idea to kill yourself to save them the trouble of facing their own shadow, their own hypocrisy, their own abuse, their own abusiveness, their own trauma. And they are thick in that suicide. You see, it doesn't actually take any great skill at all to invite someone to speak the truth, to invite someone to be seen. If you are a stable, safe, present person who shows interest and is around another person, it is a matter of hours before 90% of people start opening up. And when you appreciate them rather than punish them, and when you make more time for them rather than saying, oh, I've got to go because I've been very meticulous at filling my calendar so thick with things that I double and triple book myself just to make absolutely certain I don't have any spontaneous free time to be present. Oh, I've got this, and then I've got this, and then I've got this, and I couldn't possibly got this. Yeah, you got your bases covered. Made absolutely sure that you couldn't be there for anyone in your life and would have an absolutely rock-solid alibi. We couldn't miss this TV show, or this one, or the tennis game. So sad that the suicide came up right when the tournament was going on. Do you abuse yourself? This typically, in our civilized society, is verbally. You arrive on time. The alpha in the relationship is late. I'm so sorry, says the person who arrives on time. It's quite all right that you're late. I'll just wait in the car. No, don't trouble yourself. I wouldn't dream of having you adjust anything for me. I'm just a nothing. I have no importance. Finish your phone calls. Call someone else. I know I'm not a very important person. Oh my gosh, I got in your way and you kicked me? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I should have seen you coming. When you abuse yourself, it is always in a preemptive expectation of being abused if you do not. The way it works, and starts as a childhood pattern, is your parent borrows this and takes this and da. So one day you go in their room, you borrow something, right? In a balanced relationship, you've got some symmetry. So now then they have a rage attack. Now if you rage attack them for stealing your things, oh, you're being sassy, da. So they have a rage attack, and they keep raging. And you try and point out, well, you took 3 things of mine. I was just getting it. And don't you do, or maybe they try and hit you. Now, you're now being punished for standing up for yourself. You're given the message that you are significantly less valuable than your abuser. Why else should they be able to do 3 times what you did? And you should be grateful they didn't do more, where you do it once and you're the devil, basically. So the trouble with traumatized parents and unregulated emotion is it's all the same. You spill 3 teaspoons of milk, the house burnt down as far as they're concerned. You burn the house down, the house burnt down as far as they're concerned. There's no difference. When you're dealing with traumatized parents, they have explosive reactions related to the helplessness they feel in their unresolved trauma. Unresolved traumatic memories trigger feelings of death in the parent. If they have the thought that in some mysterious way, it's not really mysterious, it's, you have an explosive parent who tells you don't spill the milk. You're 5 years old, you spill the milk. This is how the traumatized mind works of someone with PTSD. I know. You say, oh my God, I told them not to do the milk. It's pointless. I have no control over this kid. Now, I told them not to play with matches. Look at them with the milk. You know what this means? It means they're going to burn the fucking house down. They can't control the milk. They can't control matches. They don't know what they're doing. I'm going to come home one day. The house is going to be burning. And I can't take care of this kid in a sociopathic culture that will not see that I make enough to buy insurance, but will kick me out on the streets if I don't have a house. I have got to lay the seriousness of this into this kid. And so you rage over milk. The connection with someone looking through reptilian brain filters, etc., possible threats. If it's milk, it could be matches. If you don't listen to me here, you won't listen to me there. If you go out in the street with the same stupidity as I told you to put the cap of the milk on, you didn't do it. I told you to look both ways on the streets. You're not going to do that either. This is life and death. This is life and death. Well, from the kid's point of view, there's no gradient. Burning the house down, milk, I get raged at. Now, there's multiple sources of pain for the child. One is the curtailment of freedom. The other is the rejection. I'm not going to love and you're not going to feel loved and belong here if you behave like this. I've got nowhere else to go. I depend on you. Third is the imminent threat of physical force as the parent's intensity is unregulated. Fourth can be a slap or a hit, and then the additional shock of all this. Now, a child tries to work with this in their body. They watch the facial expressions, and they try and figure out what works. And here's one strategy that works very well in many cases. Soon as you spill anything, you say, oh, Mom, I'm such a bad person. I spilled the milk. I'm terrible. You work so hard. I'm so sorry. And so what the child does is will insult themselves to let the parent know that they get just how terrible they are. Now, the parent that is sociopathic and beats their child takes this to another level. The child cuts themselves. One reason is to take control of the pain. The parent's, whippings, humiliation, public shame, etc., is so intense, and they feel completely helpless. But when they cut themselves, now they feel powerful. They've taken agency of the pain. How can you be afraid of something if you're doing it to yourself? I did this because I wanted to do it. What you're doing is you're regaining the domain of control, which is the first medicine in healing trauma. Helplessness is the killer. You cut yourself? Hey, you must be in control. Great. Good job, kid. When the parent is erratic in their violence and unattuned in their discipline, the kid will take control by creating the disciplined pain themselves to soften the shock factor. I know someone who started tearing their own hair out as a child because the amount of violence, psychologically and physically and sexually directed at them, created such a sense of helplessness that to show agency, they had to be able to pull clumps of their own hair out and beat their head on a concrete wall. They had to break their nose before they could feel they had some agency in the amount of pain and shock their body was going through, because they did it to themselves. When you punish yourself preemptively for perceived or actual crimes, it is a symptom of unmanageable trauma in which the shock and feeling of helplessness is more terrifying than the pain itself. And so the pain is administered with control to avoid the shock factor of the trauma. The added benefit to a dishonest parent is that the parent, having watched the child inflict horrific pain on themselves, mentally, emotionally, physically, can then, if they wish, wait for the child to finish hurting themselves, and then say, well, I would never have done that to you. That's just, what you did to yourself. What an idiot. And can actually pile a little bit more on. What an idiot. You dumb putz, pulling your hair out. What an idiot. And the child is ready for it, to avoid the violence. Yes, I'm an idiot. I'm a dumb putz. I'm a shitty, useless child. And pulls out another clump of hair. This is a symptom of an enraged, traumatized, sociopathic, self-loathing parent who's externalizing all that on a kid that can't process the energy. And as this forms at a young age, the image of the child is shaped by this fundamental bottom line, this certainty that they can always rely on, the one thing that nobody can take away from them in all this chaos and all this pain. I am a shit. I am worthless. And nothing you do is going to stop that. You see, trauma terrifies us with the uncertainty of the unknown, which means that we cling rigidly to whatever is most certain. When the parent's abuse cycle and abusive projection is the most constant, stable object in the space, the child will cling to that for dear life. Because if they pick the very bottom of the abuse cycle to cling to, the abuser can't take them lower than that. And when the abuse is over, if they still need the certainty and constancy of something that's solid in an erratic and insane world that is not, they can hold on. They can hold on to that abusive self-image and be certain that no matter what happens, they will be a worthless person their entire life, which is something to be relieved about because something is solid. Number one. And number two, it's in my control. Now, if I say I'm going to have a beautiful life, and I'm going to have dreams, and I'm going to have a beautiful heart, and I'm going to sing, and I'm going to grow, and I let someone see that dream, Ooh, they can whack it out of me in a few minutes with a baseball bat, can't they? You are not going to amount to anything. Now stop it. Stop pretending you're going to amount to something, or I'll keep punching you. Okay, I'm not going to amount to anything. See, that one can be knocked down. You see, but the genius of holding on to the certainty of the abuse is no abuser can convince you you're going to be something with enough passion to knock you off of your abusive self-image. Once the abuser has battered into you that you're a piece of shit and you're never going to amount to anything, and you cling to that, they can't get you to unhold that position. Oh, they can say next day, oh, maybe you'll amount to something. They're done with the binge, right? Maybe you'll amount to something. You think that's going to dislodge? I'm a shit forever. I'm going to be a shit for all eternity. I'm worthless. God doesn't love me, blah, blah, blah. No. Okay. Fine. You're not abusing me as a shit today. Okay. I'm still holding on to there. I know you'll be back. And I'll be ready for you. And you won't be able to knock me off this time. It's genius to hold on to something solid, because a child can't grow in the psychological explorations of a child leaving the mother and coming back. The most adventurous children, the children that grow the most, are the children that have safe, stable mothers to return to who are always there. That child will venture further and further away from the mother and get to know the wide world and feel safe and secure. The child that's erratically hit, batted away, shouted at, or abandoned by the mother will cling to that mother desperately their entire life. Terrified of the unknown, they will not grow. You want to stunt and of course, loneliness is at the core of some of the deepest psychological wounds. And we're dealing with very lonely parents who are in fantasies in which they're not even real. That's how lonely they are. And they want their kid to be well-adjusted and go off and not need them. Forget it. You have a terrified, lonely parent. One of the best ways to keep your kid around is to systematically shame, humiliate, and convince your child that they will never be loved by anyone. Because once the child believes it, they will behave in an unlovable way. I'm not talking esoterically, I'm talking technically. You give someone a compliment and they say, no, I'm a piece of shit. You can't love them. They don't light up with a compliment. They throw it back in your face. You try and look them in the eye and smile at them, they look down. That's not lovable. There's no love getting in. It's a technical phenomena. You can beat someone into that state where everyone who could love them just wastes their energy, and everyone who hurts them, that's comfortable, that's familiar. Oh, yeah. And if all they find is abusive partners, will they go back to mom, get a little comfort from time to time? Well, daughter, that's the way men are. There just aren't any good men there, but we'll be here for us. We'll be here for each other. The despair of giving up on a dream of dignity and love and freedom, which the choice is to be all alone, feeling like one's a shit, or all alone back with the abuser, who will tell you you're a piece of shit if ever you think you could grow anywhere else. The final thing is, can you calm down? So we're looking at 17 metrics here. Can you calm down? Can you go to sleep peacefully? Or is it terrifying to go to sleep because you're losing control? Can you let the day go? Or have you got to figure it out? Because if you don't figure it out, you may not survive. constantly working as a 5-year-old emotionally. Oh gosh, I made it this, but I hope that doesn't get taken away from me, and I hope this, because I'm trying to survive. Because at the bottom line, when the tidal wave of abuse hits me, I can't survive, and I'm going to run again. I can't defend myself, because I never have. Because I've never had a compassionate, loving witness to walk through all of this terrain with me and come out the other side. So not being able to count on myself, I am afraid. I am afraid. Because I cannot control reality, and reality is going to give me another abuser. And I can't respond because I don't know how, because I'm 5 years old, because I don't believe I can do it, because I don't have the confidence of having won one of these battles, because I'm afraid I'm going to die if I go into the fight, and so I freeze like a shaking deer. I want to share a few stories of grace for me. When my therapists betrayed me, I was invited into my abuse cycle to protect them. There were no Americans who stood up for me in this place. So I went overseas. I'd already scouted the globe a little bit because I wanted to find a place that I could cry with dignity. Philippines is not a bad place, so I went there. And for $10 an hour, 3 to 5 hours a day, I found someone who could be with these feelings, who was not at all attractive to me and had no interest in me sexually. But who was not afraid of her own tears or mine, of my grief, and who would be with me in the way that this kind of pain and grief demands, if it is not to escalate into violence. So for 3 to 5 hours every day, for months at a time, we explored this terrain, slowly, gently, kindly, feeling the body, massaging the body, moving energy through the body. And everything about that was critical. I doubled her fees to $20 an hour. But I didn't go bankrupt 5 hours a day for months at a time, plus hotel. I didn't go bankrupt the way I would have in the US for hundreds of hours of present attention. And I got to feel significant by doubling. She'd give me the $10 an hour fee, and I got to make a real difference in her life, help out her grandfather, get her boyfriend's favorite sneakers for him, give her some tips, help boost her status as an ugly, often very rude woman. It wasn't her attitude or appearance that was working in this domain. It was an energy that came through her that I could not access through any other person. But she was rude and ugly. So there was a mutual exchange at a very high level that saw a tremendous amount of healing, that helped begin the process of being able to speak and make more than 1,000 hours of video. A few hundred hours might have done it. But I was determined that the amount of pain that I was in would be leveraged to help more people. I was determined that if I was going to die, which seemed probable, that it would not be an invisible death. I was determined that the traumatic terrain that no one had explained to me in $150,000 of healing works and therapy, in intense interpersonal work since I was 12 years old on multiple continents, would be articulated so that someone else going through this terrain would not be as alone as I was. So that someone else who couldn't pick up and fly halfway around the world and find a healer to spend 5 hours a day with could benefit from what I was learning from that experience, which gave life purpose. And as Viktor Frankl has illustrated, if you have a strong enough sense of meaning and purpose, you can endure any amount of pain. What you can't do is stay alive in that amount of pain and believe it means absolutely nothing. And know that the people that need to understand it the most are the people trying to undercut you so that they don't have to face their own shadow. It's no wonder so many of our young people and our veterans kill themselves to protect the cowardly around them who do not want to know. That's why it's our ability to respond, our responsibility, that can make the difference. By raising our voice, by speaking our truth in its beauty, in its ugliness, in its fullness, as data to start navigating through some of the darkest pains and shadows of our culture and our history, and towards some of the most luminous and beautiful futures that drip, that dangle, that await to be claimed by those able and willing to participate in the ritual of embodied truth-telling that leads us to their door. I couldn't read in this period, so I got an Audible account and listened to every book on Audible about trauma. I was so dissociated that I listened to every book on Audible about shamanism and psychedelics. I then turned to YouTube and hundreds of hours. Terence McKenna, Little Alan Watts, this person. Young girl cutting herself. Person dealing with age regression. Slowly piecing things together Every time I had the energy sitting down and starting the video. Here's what's going on today. Meet Dane today, physically, emotionally, mentally. What's different? What's shifting? Why is it there? Why can't I move like I used to be able to move here? What's the objects in the path? It's never been easier in the history of humankind to, on a personal level, access information. It's not enough, though. Cuddling and sex and massage are a very important part from a place of real love. It cannot be purchased, this kind of healing. You have to do a service for someone, to show up for them at a level capable of eliciting gratitude and presence and loyalty. And I was fortunate enough to do such a service to the woman who is now my wife and who I thought was simply going to be someone I could help. I've outlined that journey on Abuse at the Human Awareness Institute. I think it's .org, it could be .com. Abuse at the Human Awareness Institute. My healing journey. Because for 3 years, at the peak of the waves hitting, I never knew I would live. Now, it seems I'm going to live. I don't know how much has been taken from my life and if I'll be able to recover that in, restored, adrenal fatigue and things like that. But there has never been so much help, so much love and so much support. The more I would tell the truth and give up my abuser's burdens, the more it made room for the spiritual love that I turned away from to secure my abuser's protection. You see, that's the cost of investing in the lie. That's the cost of investing in the lie. Because you can't see divinity through the opacity, through the blockade of the abuser's lies. And they can't see divinity either. That's the biggest price of survival, is buying into the illusion of the abuser's reality, in which there is no transcendent divinity. That's what they've given up on, because they lost that in their childhood, when their abuser stole it from them. When you lose that sense of divine connection, in order to protect the abuser from their discomfort, now you are all alone with the abuser. And in that feeling of loneliness and betrayal, great bitterness, hatred, and rage emerges that is non-personal. It's just a chemical reaction to being in that location. Your heart is telling you you're in a dangerous space. And your body is telling you you can't afford to leave the dangerous space because you might get killed. And your mind doesn't know what the fuck to do because you're in a trauma-illiterate cult called America, in which there may be 1,000 people lying to you, but you can go through life without one person telling you the truth. The truths you need to understand, to have the courage to face death, to come back into right relationship with a transcendent dimension of which we are all a part, of which we are all moving towards. Microdosing psychedelics is a small part of that Well, it's hard to say how big a part of that journey it is. But reading all the books in psychedelic literature, a much bigger part. How do you integrate the biology and the psychology of those domains and learn from them? And finally, the art of slowly practicing for thousands of hours to speak, to speak, to speak, to bring my conscious mind up to date with where my heart, my body, my soul has been split and wounded. To bring my mind up to date, to have empathy and understand a map of that terrain that correlates tightly with reality, so that I can calm down, so that I have some sense of a map in which I know where I am. And you're part of that. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of courage, a lot of effort and focus to be able to make a recording like this. And yet I do it because of you. Because I believe in the goodness of the people watching. And I believe that goodness is worth fighting for.